now that we're about to vote, I see that
You know, excuse me, you know yesterday the Israeli army killed Mu'taz Washaha in Bir Zayt. Every day the Israeli kill the Palestinian. You want to know, you came here to sit with a Palestinian, this is Palestinian. يعني وكمان رسالة للفلسطينية هذول بتمثلوش اللي أنفسكم وعار على الفلسطينية بقعدوا وبيطلعوا امبارح معتز وشحة بقتلوه في نص بير زيت. I don't believe to talk with you. You go to speak with the Israeli army there. Tell him every day. No, I don't. Tell him every day the Israeli killed the kids. Why? What he do? I'm a refugee and I live in Aida camp and I want to back in my home, in my village. Yeah, you want to change, you want to go there and the Israeli army to speak with him. You're building the wall. If the Israelis need peace, don't building the wall. Don't building the wall and don't kill the kids. Don't kill the Mu'taz Washaha yesterday in Bir Zayt and At-Tawil in Jerusalem in the prison. Killed him. Why? Why killed him? What he do? He killed people? Don't kill people.
Israelis and Palestinians have made remarkable advances in technology, art, science, transportation, and communication. Israel produces more startup companies than Japan, China, India, Korea, Canada, or the UK. It is second only to the US when it comes to companies listed on NASDAQ. The Palestinians are the most educated people of all Arab nations. In recent years, both Israel and Palestine have experienced a huge growth in their economy and educational system. Universities and technical institutes on both sides are popping up like mushrooms after the rain. Yet, when it comes to peace, we see no advances or innovations. The ongoing relationship between them is distinguished by pettiness, hatred, and suspicion. There is little generosity, goodwill, or imagination. When it comes to peace, the innovation and originality that make them so special and unique is conspicuously missing. Not only is there no improvement, but the relationship between them is actually regressing.
The people in Ramallah and Kalandia are like a jail, a big jail. This wall, it's not preventive to save all of the Israeli people.
It doesn't?
It doesn't, yeah.
Now, all these cars that we see here, is that because of the wall?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
يمكن تروق الحين يعني يمكن فيش عمال. رؤساء الزمان يكون عندهم مليون عمال.
For decades, the leaders of Israel and Palestine, with the assistance of the US and other nations, have restricted themselves exclusively to one solution, the only solution which was attempted again and again and failed. Which one? The two-state solution.
The ultimate goal of all of us, which is two states.
The nation-state of the Jewish people and a nation-state for the Palestinian people.
Of two states?
There's two states.
Until there is a two-state solution.
Two-state solution.
Two states for two peoples.
Two states living side by side in peace and security.
The last chance to save the two-state solution.
The stagnation of thinking for peace is simply astonishing. Are the people of Israel and Palestine truly interested in peace? If so, why are they not pursuing other options with the same vigor and innovation that they apply to all other aspects of their lives? Amazingly, however, For war, we are much more resourceful, more imaginative, more vigorous, and more productive. For war, we think of everything under the sun. For war, we have unlimited options, every option, and we use them.
Are on the table. That all options are on the table. We mean it.
But all options, including military force, are on the table.
And I will take no options off the table to achieve that goal.
The question whether Israel can survive peace is maybe the most crucial existential question of our generation. Can the Jewish people survive without an external enemy? Even last week I was in a conversation with students in one of the colleges in Israel, and eventually we came to this issue. Why do you think that we never try to engage in with the region, integrate in the region? Why all the peace agreements we had were about partition rather than about sharing? So they were thinking, and then one of them said, Avram, what do you mean? Open borders, peace like Jews are having in Europe and in the States? I said, yes, for example. So she said, does that mean that I will have to marry an Arab? I'll be able to marry an Arab, and he will marry me? I said, yes, that's part of open life. She said, I don't want it. The big shtetl is a toolbox we know, and Israel is the biggest shtetl ever created.
Israelis see peace as something negative, not something good, because they believe it's been inculcated into Israeli Jews that the Arabs, because we don't use the word Palestinians, we don't recognize that identity, that category, that Arabs are our permanent enemies, and they're just waiting to ambush us. So peace is impossible. You can't trust the Arabs.
Because at the moment we are not the strongest country in this region, we should be wiped out. There is no value to peace without military total superiority. If there is no military superiority, we are not here. All the minorities in the Middle East were wiped out when they were not strong enough.
I think Israel can survive the peace. Actually, the decision makers, be they political or economic, and to some degree military, although I don't think all the military agrees, as you can see in the film Gatekeepers, with Israeli policy. I mean, they didn't accept, the heads of the Shin Bet didn't accept the idea that security is the reason why we're not giving up the occupation.
Is that the defense industry, basically?
It's the defense industry, but wider, because the defense industry permeates the entire Israeli economy. At the same time, it's a right-wing government today, and this evaluation that we can win, we can do this, we can succeed in apartheid in the way that South Africa couldn't, because we can parlay our military strength. It's both an attraction to Jewishness and this guilt about Jewishness and the Holocaust, plus the Jewish lobbies. We can parlay all this into a situation where we can maintain this indefinitely. You see, this not peace, not war, kind of a thing. So until Israel is disabused of the fact that it can win, it's not going to compromise.
So you're saying, well, we need to have a two-state solution. And I say, fine, have a two-state solution. But we've been talking about a two-state solution since 1947.
The best way to achieve peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis is with a two-state solution. However, I think there's virtually no chance that that's going to happen, in large part because the Israelis are opposed to giving the Palestinians a viable state.
Once we become equal partners, once Palestinians and Israelis are equal, and that's what Palestinians need.
Do you see a possibility of peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians without the creation of the two states?
No.
نحن مقتنعون بأن هذه الأرض تتسع للشعبين معا.
You don't see me. You need to see the Palestinians. They're your neighbors. And they're neighbors to stay.
Two states with an open border, which would in practice mean that we shall live in the same country.
Palestine and Israel claiming the exact same physical territory. And within that territory have two states, which deal with their religious sides and so forth, but have commonality within a structure, which is what you're calling a confederation. It's very close to what you're proposing, and it's a very sexy idea intellectually to be thinking about.
Peace is a very big word, and it's difficult to define.
I believe that for Israel, normalization is a very important component of its existence, since it is the only Jewish state in the world, in a Middle East for which it is quite difficult to swallow the fact that we are here.
Now it's abnormality. Now it's a culture of hate and a culture of killing and a culture of settlements and a culture of burning trees. That's what we need to end.
In many ways, we imposed ourselves on the region, and it is our task to normalize relations.
Normalization means, finishing, ending the occupation. Living as equals. Fences create good neighbors. We don't need walls, ugly walls.
Israel cannot maintain itself as a democratic and Jewish state if we keep imposing our control on the Palestinians and deny them of the right to have a state of their own.
Fairness to me is two states, a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as capital, to live side by side in peace and security with the State of Israel on the 1967 borders.
Many kinds of visions, one democratic state, one Islamic state, one Zionist state, two states, three states, confederations, binationalism, regional arrangements. All of these things will not succeed unless they respect human rights, primarily the right of refugees to return to their homes and lands.
In 1947, the new United Nations proposed the territory of Palestine be separated into two states. Jews accepted the plan and declared their independence as Israel, but Arabs throughout the region viewed the plan as more European colonialism. They rejected it, and war ensued. The Jews won, pushing past the proposed UN border to annex much of the land that had been set aside for the Palestinian state. Over 700,000 Palestinian refugees fled into the neighboring Arab states, the West Bank and Gaza. They have never been allowed to return.
Many poor Arabs, some with pickup trucks, cars, beds on the top, some on foot. Never-ending stream of Arabs coming out of the city. Very sad sight. We could have stopped all that. There was no doubt about that. We had the armor to do it.
War with neighboring states threatened again in 1967. Israel struck first, occupying new territories, including the West Bank and Gaza. Again, many Palestinians fled from violence. Those who remained in occupied territories were governed by Israel, but not granted citizenship.
Given the realities of today politically, I think we have to have a one-state solution. There has to be one state here. Israel had an opportunity to have a two-state solution, but Israel chose territory over that. It chose to keep the occupation. And so today, I think, not only is it human rights and justice and peace that point to a one-state solution, but the political realities don't offer anything else. Israel eliminated any other possibility. And so I think that's where we have to go.
Catastrophe. It's a password for catastrophe. It will be a pariah state, worse than South Africa was in the apartheid years. So if you don't want to be a pariah state, we have to give them full rights. Full right, we are 50-50. 50-50, it's no more the Jewish state. The Israelis are not interested in a one-state solution. They don't want a couple of million Arabs because it will become a binational state. Although the way they are handling it, they are going in that direction.
So you are favoring the two-state formula as the only formula because Israel wants it?
It's because everybody wants it.
I have recognized the state of Israel right to exist in 1967, and I'm yet waiting to hear any Israeli official who can say, I recognize the state of Palestine to live in peace and security on the 1967 lines, Ahad Tesha Sheva.
If you have a separation, you're just setting things back. And you're creating more misunderstanding and more envy. If you have a weak Palestinian state next door with a very poor economy, looking over its shoulder and seeing what's happening in Israel, this doesn't work.
Both of the side, Palestinian and Israeli, they have an image about the other side. So you can break this image by making meetings between the guys, you know, the young people.
Right. What are you studying?
Human rights.
Human rights. Oh, okay, perfect.
Israel and Palestine, they won't get together. Everything is different.
What's different?
Culture, religion, everything is different. They will never get along, Palestine and Israel.
You don't think they'll ever get along?
No, I don't think they'd ever get along.
Okay. Biologically, do you think the Israelis and Palestinians are different?
No.
For me, peace equates to one other word, which I know very well what it means. It's equality.
What I know deep in my bones is that if you've done the same thing for 50 years and nothing's changed, you should try something different if you want a different outcome.
The same could be said of Israel, Palestine as well. Oh, I see. Wow, it's a small area.
Yeah.
What makes you Jewish?
Well, it's very simple. According to Jewish halacha, my mother is Jewish, so I'm Jewish, so it's very simple.
I see. What makes your mother Jewish?
Because her mother was Jewish.
And her mother, what made her Jewish?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
The same.
The same.
All the generations are Jewish.
Okay, so who was the first Jew?
I know who was the first Jew.
The first Jewish mother.
Abraham, our ancestor.
But that's her father. Who is the first mother? Sarah?
Not mine. Okay.
I did not choose Judaism ideologically. I was born Jewish, as I was born Bailin, and it is important for me that my kids will be proud of their family. This is the only thing.
Okay, but let's say there is a Palestinian majority. You are still born to a Bailin.
This is 100% true, but I will not stay here. This is the only difference. Why? I mean, I don't want to be a minority in a Palestinian state. With all due respect and my appreciation to the Palestinians and to the Arabs, this is not the place that I would choose to live in.
Why not? Why not?
I don't want, I mean, am I a free man? If I'm a free man, I don't want to live here.
Why are the Oriental Jews referred to as Oriental Jews versus Arab Jews?
Because they would be very insulted if you call them Arab Jews.
Is that a derogatory term, the word Arab?
Of course.
Well, it was made derogatory. In other words, there was a deal struck in a way with them back in the 50s. If you want to integrate, if you want to be Israelis, if you want to be part of our society, you have to stop being Arabs. Now, we'll call you Sephardi Jews, Mizrahi Jews, maybe Eastern Jews, but those will become folkloristic, sanitized identities.
I was born in Israel in 1953. My parents immigrated to Palestine from Iraq in 1936. My father was a Zionist. My grandparents lived most of their lives in Iraq and immigrated to Israel and eventually died there. My parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents spoke mostly Arabic. As a youth growing in Israel, I rejected my Arabic ancestry. I saw myself as a Sabra, which is a term for an Israeli who is proud to be Israeli. After my military service, I immigrated to the U.S. and became a lawyer. I have practiced law for 34 years. I have come to conclude that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will not be decided in a court of law. Israelis and Palestinians will have to resolve this conflict themselves. Jews are not biologically different than non-Jews, are they, in your opinion?
Apparently not, yeah.
We both belong to the same democratic culture from one aspect. Those who believe in free economy, in democracy, they share the same the same view of the world. We may differ maybe in music,
food.
No, food we eat the same. We all eat hummus like this.
The best way to resolve the conflict is to start by recognizing what the two sides have in common. Today's technology makes it possible for people to easily connect and find commonality across borders. In order to have peace, it will be necessary to decrease the level of nationalism on both sides. Israelis and Palestinians could feel strong connection to their land without the need to define their love for their country in terms of animosity for the other side.
There's nothing different about the two peoples other than their stupidity in how to deal with the future together.
You have a identity card, Israeli identity card, and in it, it says that you're Jewish, right?
I'm part of a group which has applied to the Supreme Court to strike it out.
Oh, and were you successful?
We are still in the middle of it. It goes on endlessly because the court does not want to decide.
How can it be a democracy for Jews when we don't really know what Jewish means?
So it's part of the paradox of what is Jewish? Is Jewish religious? Is
Right.
Jewish national? Is Jewish culture? Is Jewish citizen? What is it?
Jews live with Arabs in peace for thousands of years. They view themselves as cousins. Most Palestinians and Israelis are secular. Just like the Palestinians, most Israelis share Arabic ancestry. They share the same facial features, mannerism, food, music, and culture, as well as the same land. Is it a time we remember Israelis and Palestinians have a lot more in common than what sets them apart? Do you think terrorism could achieve anything for either the Israelis or the Palestinians?
We never use terror.
As each day passed, more bombs were thrown. In a series of roundups, British troops brought in terrorists, members of the Ergun and Stern gangs.
We did use terror. Israelis used terrorists too.
How?
Well, starting with coming out of Egypt, we celebrate the killing of each Egyptian-born.
If you define Eser Hamakot as terrorism,
The 10 plagues.
I'm a terrorist. Okay.
Well, is it not? I mean, we celebrate that every Seder.
You are on the verge of speaking nonsense, so let's stop here.
It's not the only genocide which is being raised in the Bible. God commanded Israel to kill all the inhabitants of the country when they came here, except that there was no God, that the Israelis never came into this country, and it just never happened.
בואי נגיד שהבן שלך או הבת שלך התחתנו עם מוסלמי.
לא.
מה תהיה התגובה שלך?
לא מקובל. לא מקובל.
עכשיו זה שווה לך שהבן שלך ילחם בשביל שהבת שלך לא תתחתן עם מוסלמית?
וואי, זה שאלות ש...
את רצית להיות מרואיינת, אז שואלים אותך שאלות.
זה לא, זו שאלה קשה בסדר, אבל לא חשבתי על...
אני על השאלה.
אמרתי שזה לא נראה ריאלי, כי זה כל כך לא קרוב שזה יהיה. אז ככה שלגביי אני לא אזכה לראות את הילדים שלי עם נשואים אחרים.
כן, אבל באופן תיאורטי, את חושבת שזה שווה שבן ילחם בשביל שהבת תהיה מופרדת ולא תתחתן עם מוסלמית? האם זה שווה את זה?
בוודאי. ברור, אני לא מעוניינת.
Is it worth fighting for you to maintain a Jewish state?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Okay. So if you decide you want to marry an Israeli person, a Jewish person, what would your parents say?
Assuming that I would find out someone's faith before I married them or before I fell in love with them, I think it would be a red flag if they were Muslim.
Well, in our religion, I can't marry someone other than Muslim, so I think they would say no.
My reaction would be Mazel Tov, do whatever you want. If you ask me, I will cry. But you will always be my son or my daughter.
למה רק בארץ הזו, ישראל פלסטין, לא רוצים לחיות ביחד?
כן.
או נגיד באירופה, באיזו מדינה באירופה, או בארצות הברית. בארצות הברית לא הולכים על פי הדת. אם אנחנו נמשיך לחשוב על העבר, אנחנו לא יכולים להתקדם. לא נגיע לכלום ולא נתקדם.
כן.
בהסכם אוסלו, מאותו היום שחתמו, יסכימו על חינוך השלום בבתי ספר ישראלי ופלסטיני. מה היינו מרוויחים היום אנחנו? גיל שלם.
אתה רואה שיש סיכוי לעשות שלום עם הפלסטינאים?
לא תהיה ברירה, זה יקרה בסוף.
ואיך יראה השלום?
לפעמים יותר טוב, לפעמים פחות טוב.
זה יהיה על בסיס טריטוריאלי או זה יהיה על בסיס חוקתי?
גם וגם. כלומר, בהתחלה טריטוריאלי, עם הזמן זה גם יהפוך למשהו מקובל, חוקתי, כולם יבינו, כולם יסכימו עם זה, יקבלו את זה.
Why is it necessary to have a Jewish state?
First of all, it's not necessary. It's not, it didn't came from God.
Israel says we want to be a Jewish state.
That's the official doctrine of the State of Israel.
What does it mean to be a Jewish state?
That's a good question. No one knows. No one knows. It's not defined anywhere. Israel officially defines itself as a Jewish and democratic state. Democratic, we more or less know what it means because other people are democratic too, and we know what they mean. What it means to be a Jewish state, that's debated every day in Israel for the last 60 years.
Jewish state for me means, first and foremost, monopoly on the gate. That's it.
So
I need a monopoly.
Immigration law.
Yeah, of course. It is, I want that every Jew in the world will any time be able and allowed to come to this place.
Israel is really a religious state.
God forbid. God forbid. Who is religious? The Bibi is religious. Paris is religious. I mean,
but when you say when you say a Jewish state, what does it mean?
It's the Jewish nation. It is the Jewish tribe. It is not the Jewish religion.
But it has Jewish laws.
Regretfully, you are right about a section of our laws, which is the matrimonial laws, and they are the religious one. This is, in my view, a crime that people cannot marry and divorce unless they go abroad.
But also the immigration laws are religious laws.
This is in the nature of the Zionist project. The Zionist project wanted to create a Jewish community in this country with the aim of creating a Jewish state. And in this Jewish state, there was no place for Arabs. This was deliberate policy from the beginning. If they could have wished the Arabs away, they would have wished them away, but the Arabs were here, unfortunately. So they had to accept the fact, but they did not accept them either as partners, nor as co-citizens, nor in any other way. Peace with the Palestinians did never really interest them very much.
Ever since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, there has been persistent conflict, not only between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but also between Israelis themselves. Most Israeli Jews are secular, but a growing minority are Orthodox religious Jews, in Hebrew, Haredim, who are legally exempt from military service. The secular majority is pushing for them to share the burden, demanding that they be drafted into the military.
עכשיו, אתה היית רוצה שכל המדינה... ודאי, זו שאלה. ודאי. אז אם כל המדינה תלמד תורה, מי
יצטרכו. לא יצטרכו.
למה?
כי אם לא עושים רצון השם, אז משיח יבוא, אין שום מלחמות, אין שום דבר.
והמשיח רצון השם.
But we believe and we know that we protect the Jewish nation, at least equally, if not more, by actually studying what we've practiced for 3,000 years.
Saving Jewish lives is self-evident, an important thing. However, these are the sorts of people who think it's black and white. It's not black and white. It's complicated.
It's a contradiction. You can't be secular and a Jew. A Jew means a religion. You can't be secular. There's percentage, 5%, 5% religious, 10%, 50%. It's all a matter of percent. We're all the same. We're all together in the same religion.
If Israel is not a Jewish state, whatever it means, but if it is not a Jewish state, I'm not interested in any other arrangement. A confederation, a federation, a joint Middle East.
What's more important, peace or Jewish state?
Jewish state, for sure.
So,
for sure, a Jewish state for me, the big peacenik, is much more important than peace.
So a religious democracy is an oxymoron.
Of course. First of all, because every religion I know has a system of hierarchy. Actually, the word hierarchy is a religious word. Democracy means that the people convene and enact laws. If they don't like the law, they change the law. Theocracy means that God has given the law 5,000 or 4,000 or 3,000 years ago, and they're unchangeable. God has given the laws for all times. The law is interpreted by people who are not elected, but by priests who are elected by the religion.
So is it an oxymoron to say Jewish democracy? Or the democratic...
I want to repeat, you're repeating this mistake all the time. For in the Zionist, Jew is not a religion. It's not Christian, it's not like Muslim.
But someone,
it's a national religion.
I understand that. But the state of Israel will not allow a person who is a non-Jew to immigrate.
To
immigrate into Israel.
That's not true. A non-Jew cannot immigrate under the law of return.
Right.
But they can, like in every other country, they can apply for an immigration visa and can immigrate.
So under
it's
the
very
law,
difficult.
So it's difficult to immigrate if you're not a Jew.
Very difficult.
Who makes a decision whether or not you're a Jew?
Rabbis.
And those rabbis are elected?
No.
I don't agree with Netanyahu that make a condition for the peace negotiation that the Arabs will recognize that we are a Jewish state. I think this is bullshit, because I don't need their recognition. This is already a Jewish state.
If you tell me that I have a border, but I don't have peace yet, but I can perhaps wait generations for peace, but not to have a border, I will say, give me the border first.
But wouldn't that create a situation where we, Israelis and Palestinians and Arabs, could be in war with each other in perpetuity?
Yeah, but if the price for peace is no Jewish state, I'm not in this game. I'm not in this game. Okay. I'm not interested.
We are Jews. We need a Jewish state. We are a distinct national unit.
Well, but
why you don't ask this question about other nations?
In America, there is complete distinction between religion and...
It's not a matter of... I'm not religious. Most of the Israelis are not religious, but we are all Jewish.
So what makes us Jewish?
The origin, the tradition, the language, and their self-identity.
Okay, but we just discussed that the Arabs are part of almost all of it, and they are... We don't consider them Jews.
Whom?
The Arabs.
Which Arabs?
The Arabs that live in Israel.
Okay, they are citizens of Israel, but they are not Jewish. They are Palestinians. They belong to the Palestinian nation.
Does Israel...
If he lives in Jaffa or in Haifa, he is a Palestinian, who resides in Israel, who carries Israeli ID. You live in Los Angeles?
Yes.
You are a Jew, citizens of the United States of America. So simple.
But let me ask you this: is there an official definition of who is a Jew in Israel?
Look, volumes of books and papers and researches, and the answer is very well done about it. The one who says I'm a Jew, he is a Jew.
Okay, so if a Palestinian from Gaza says I'm
yes,
a Jew,
if Muhammad from Gaza will enter this room and say I'm a Jew, I told him you are a Jew.
and would he be able to immigrate to the state of Israel if he says that?
I think legally he can. The religious guy, the rabbis will not accept it, but they are not accept people who are not Palestinians of Gaza. They also say no, he's not good enough for being a Jew. But leave them aside. If he wants to come here and to live with us and to serve in the military, to do all his duties, and so and he say I'm Jewish, I will not put any test to him. The rabbis will do.
But they're the one who decide.
So they shouldn't decide.
I'm sorry?
They shouldn't decide.
But they are. They're the one who decide.
This is one of the problems of this government, but it's not the only one.
Well, isn't that a problem with the definition of a Jewish state when you have rabbis who makes a decision who is a
We are a
Jew?
Jewish state because we are the state of the Jewish people, not because of the rabbi.
But we don't have a definition of who is a Jew.
Everyone has his own definition. There is no one definition which is in consensus.
But is that substantive enough? Does that have enough foundation for a country to...
Look, what will make this state Jewish is not the rabbis. Definitely no.
Yeah. So
most of the Israelis, like myself, don't accept their authority in nothing.
כמה שנגיד להם שאנחנו אלפי דורות פה, שאבינו, אברהם אבינו, וקמנו פה, וזה, הם לא מוכנים להבין את זה, הם לא מוכנים לקבל את זה.
משנת 52 אני נולדתי, ואני חי בארץ הזאת.
אתה בן 61?
אני בן 62.
62.
כן, ואני רואה את הבעיה לא בין ערבים ויהודים.
כן.
הבעיה בין הערבים וציונים.
הבעיה בין ערבים וציונים.
אני אגיד לך, הציונים רוצים כל הארץ, ורוצים שיגרשו כל הערבים. וזה דבר לא הגיוני.
To define our country right now as a Jewish state is very confusing.
You can't have an ethnically pure state in the 21st century. You just can't. Now we have, it's almost as bad as with the Palestinians, what's happening with the asylum seekers.
איך הגעת לפה? ברגל?
הגעת ברגל, כן.
ברגל?
כן.
אז מה הסיבה שבאתם פה לישראל?
אני באתי באמת, רציתי להיות כמו בני אדם, אבל היום אין לי אחריות פה. אני עכשיו לא קטן, אבל זה קשה.
אז רגע, אני לא הבנתי.
כן.
טוב לך פה או לא טוב לך פה?
אני לא טוב לי. אם טוב לי, אתה לא מסעת אותי פה.
מה זה?
אם אני טוב לי, באמת לא היית פה.
Israel can't relate in a human way to anything because it has to keep this artificial Jewish thing going, so that we're putting thousands of asylum seekers from Africa into prisons. We're maintaining the occupation inside Israel. You know, almost 30% of Israeli citizens are not Jewish.
Do you believe that Israel is a security for the Jewish people around the world?
Yes. Definitely.
How?
Because this is a place that you can walk free to be a Jew and no one will do anything bad to you.
Okay, so if I live in Los Angeles and some racist guy attacks me, how would the state of Israel protect me?
No, they can't protect you in LA. But you can live here and not in LA, and then you are protected.
Okay, so it's only protected if I come here?
Of course.
Okay.
Israel was officially created to be a haven for the Jews of the whole world. Actually, Israel is the only place in the world where Jews now are living in perpetual danger.
Even if Jews had to find refuge, Israel's the last place they would find refuge. They would go anywhere, you know, and when Jews had a choice, they never came to Israel, except nutty ones like me.
Jews were labeled as Jews outside, and now we are labeling Jews inside of Israel, which continues this labeling of people based on religion.
Well, if you say that the fact that there is a Jewish state by itself is increasing anti-Semitism, you may be right to an extent, but this is a price worth paying in order to have an asylum.
You're preaching to the converted because I'm against Israel being defined as a Jewish state.
But it's not a matter of decision. This is our home, and here we stay. We have to be strong, militarily. This is prerequisite for everything, to begin with, before anything else. We have to be militarily superior on all our environment. Then we have to defuse the bomb, which is the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict. How to defuse it? By giving the Palestinians a state of their own.
The PNC had accepted two states, Palestine state and Jewish state.
Why didn't Israel accept the two-state solution 25 years ago? 78% of the country of historic Palestine would have been recognized as Israel, accepted by the Palestinians, by the Arab world, by the Muslim League, by the international community. Why didn't it grab that at that time? You can't explain it by settlers. You know, the settlers, the real settlers are 1% of the Israeli population, the ideological settlers. There's got to be some bigger reason why. Why all these years?
What's the reason?
And I think the reason is that the occupied territories are kind of a laboratory in which Israel develops weapons, security systems, and a whole, what I call a matrix of control that's exportable to other countries. So the occupied territory is a resource for Israel. It gives it two things: tremendous economic importance. Defense exports are about a third of the Israeli economy. It gives Israel that prestige, that international clout.
You're trying to say that the Israelis and the Israeli leadership and the Palestinian leadership are almost on the same page in failing to reach an agreement, which is not the case. That is not the case at all, because you have one side that has been promoting negotiations and endorsing the negotiations as being the only way to solve this conflict, while you have the Israeli side, the Israeli leadership, and precisely the current government of Netanyahu that say that doesn't give a shit about the negotiations and they don't care about anything, and they're only moving on and on and on with the settlements.
Both sides are angry at you. Both.
Okay. It's okay. They have the right to be angry.
You failed. You failed.
Don't say I failed. If you say that I did not produce an agreement, you're right. I did not get an agreement. Israelis and Palestinians are angry at me not because I'm making peace, because I have failed to deliver. Every minute, I'm not delivering peace. It could be the life of their sons and daughters.
Israel is quite generous.
Would you agree to
towards
go
them.
back to the 1967 border?
Not all.
Would you be willing to split Jerusalem?
No. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. No.
Would you be willing to give the Jordan Valley to the Palestinians?
No. No.
So basically, what you believe in is that the Palestinians will be a territory, but it will be surrounded by Israel.
And what's wrong being surrounded by Israelis?
What's your view on the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza?
I don't see it as occupation. It was our nation for 2,000 years.
It's a very small country. This notion of dividing it was never really bought by anybody. Various people use this notion of division to suit their own interests, including, by the way, some Palestinians and most Israeli Zionist leaders. But really, it's not really genuine. Nobody has really come up with a plan to divide this very small country with its natural resources being limited.
So they're wasting their time.
It is not only a waste of time, it's totally counterproductive and totally against peace to advocate for this. And the evidence for that is the past 20 years. What have they been doing in the past 20 years of negotiation? Why haven't they? If it was so simple to arrive at a two-state solution, West Bank and Gaza call it Palestine, and 78% of historic Palestine call it the Jewish state of Israel. Why haven't they signed this deal? It's a very simple deal.
When you say today two-state solution, for many, for me included, it's an interim solution. Interim towards what? Now, this towards what is something which is missing from the book. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Are they discussing a way to engage even after the two-state?
I don't really believe it. I don't believe it.
For the cause of peace, is it better to isolate from the Palestinians or engage with the Palestinians?
Certainly to engage. You cannot have peace by isolation.
Rationally, maybe to engage. Subconsciously, to isolate. Most of the Israeli population don't recognize, don't know the Palestinians, and they feel that their day-to-day life are going quite good. So they tell themselves, why do we need this engagement?
I think that isolation is what we call in Hebrew a matkon. It's a recipe for disaster. And will create an ongoing conflict and will lure more and more Palestinians to hate Israel, to create two states. That's why I'm so much against this idea of artificially creating in such a small country. If we were like Texas and we created two states within Texas, North Texas and South Texas, like North Dakota and South Dakota, okay, that could work.
So you don't think the Jews will ever agree to have one state, one vote?
There are only fanatic right-wingers who believe that it's better to have the greater Israel in a non-Jewish state than to have a Jewish state on 78% of Eretz Israel.
Because they believe that if it's a one state, then the settlements will not be removed.
Settlements will not be removed, and they believe in maintaining the occupation under another name. It won't work.
Every hill except this one where we are standing, the tops of it is Israeli settlements. All the poles there, all the watchtowers you see there are all Israelis. But the other thing you see from here is what we call maximum geography with minimum demography. A maximum geographic area for the state of Israel with the minimum number of Palestinians who come with us. So the wall is built close to the Palestinian built-up areas, but away from the settlements to leave enough space for settlement expansion, not enough space for the Palestinian, of course, to expand or anything else.
It's a possible nightmare, yes. If there will be no solution, we are gradually drifting to this catastrophe. It can happen and should be avoided, should be prevented.
Because no longer will be a Jewish state.
No democratic, no Jewish.
Well, in theory, it could be a democratic, non-Jewish.
No. Look, it can be not. I don't believe it will be non-Jewish and democratic.
Well, is there a correlation? Are the Jews are the only one that could come up with a democratic system?
No, but in this region we are the only one. We and the Palestinians are the only one who maintain democratic society.
But there are Jews.
Except in Gaza.
But there are Jews and Arabs living in the state of Israel under a democratic system.
In Israel proper, not in the West Bank.
So why can't we extend it into the West Bank?
Because then you annex 4-point-something million Palestinians, and then if today the Arabs in Israel are a minority of 20%, they will be 50%, and 50% is not a minority.
It'll be a kind of a one state that's not only binational, but bi-religious. Some kind of a Jewish Muslim state. It has to be democratic, and so you do have the principle of one person, one vote. But this is a national conflict. We're not just a bunch of voters here. This isn't Nebraska.
How do you dismantle the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and the Hamas government?
Well, here, you can a little bit take a leaf out of the book of South Africa. It wasn't that the government was dismantled, but it was transformed into another kind of a system. At some point, there's going to be a collapse. That, I think, is the missing piece in our analysis. Because if you try to approach it linearly, and go from A to B to C. You can't get there. It doesn't work that way. So I think Israel's created a situation where sooner rather than later, this whole situation is going to collapse.
Physically collapse?
Physically, economically, politically, yeah. The good thing about the failure of the Kerry talks is finally the two-state solution is gone. We can clear the air because it's never been, at least in the last 15, 20 years, a real solution. But it's been this cloud that's prevented us from seeing through and getting and really finding a solution. That's gone. Once the PA is out of the way, there's no more political process. Kerry is gone. It's finished. Now we'll be left with raw occupation. No more pretext that there's negotiations or another side or this or that. In that situation, with a reoccupation by Israel, I think it creates an absolutely untenable situation, especially because the Israel-Palestine conflict is a global conflict.
I want a secular state which is equal to all, which belongs to all of its citizens. It's about time to transform the conflict into, say, constitutionally speaking, between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, every individual has the rights for the same rights.
رأيي إنه رأيي الشخصي أنا إنه كل العالم يكون دولة واحدة، كل البشر متساوون بغض النظر عن الدين والعرق والقومية.
So it is better to have a one state than
the global, on the global.
Global, okay. What about just creating a state that is for the Israelis and the Palestinians together with one government, one person vote, equal?
ما حكيت له يا أنا دولة.
It says exactly that's what was PLO in 1960 proposed, a democratic state in all over Palestine, where Muslims, Christians, and Jews live side by side with equal rights and equal privileges and duties. That proposal was rejected by Israel and by the international community, and everybody in the world put every pressure they could on the PLO to change course. The PLO changed course and accepted to recognize Israel in 1988 and endorse the two-state solution. Now you're coming back to square number one, asking the Palestinians to rescind the two-state solution and start talking about a one-state solution. Right. This is crazy.
Separating religion from government, a secular state where one person is one vote. Any benefit to that?
It will never happen. Not in the next 100 years.
Why wouldn't it happen?
Because it would be the exact opposite of what the endeavor of the last 150 years was about. The whole idea of Zionism, of coming here in the first place, was to create a country in which we, Hebrew people, are masters of their own fate. The majority, our culture, our language, will be dominant. Once you have one state, this state will be an Arab state. The Jews in this state will be the same as the Jews in America or the Jews in South Africa. We go back to where it all started from. We are already a minority in the country between the sea and the river.
Do you see any possibility that either the Israeli government or the Palestinian government, including the Hamas government, will agree to dismantle itself in favor of creating one state?
Of course not. I don't see in the whole world a national state disbanding itself voluntarily. And since we have an atomic bomb, it cannot be done by force either.
Elderly lawyer gave over his office to his son. And his son came over to him after 6 months and he said, "Dad, I settled all the conflicts." He said, "What did you do?" I've out of business. 30 years I made money out of this conflict, right?
Is it my perception only, or is it true that there is only one option that is being really discussed, only one option on the table, which is a two-state solution?
Not even one.
Why are other options are being ignored? I mean, Israel is so sophisticated in everything, technology, science, industry, everything, but when it comes to peace, it only has one option.
In some other circumstances, I will debate whether this option is seriously on the table. I think
So you think it's even less than an option?
You think peace should be based on territorial compromise?
Yes.
Only territorial?
It's all that matters in the end, right?
Well, that's all that matters, is territory?
At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. It's going to be territorial
Do you
compromise.
see any solution other than territorial?
No.
It is not that we are not creative enough to suggest something else. This is Zionism. If Israel is not a Jewish state, I have nothing to do here.
Is the public in the United States demanding peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
No, I don't think the American public cares that much about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
And in your opinion, the public in Israel and the Palestinian public, are they demanding peace of their leaders?
Well, I don't think in the Israeli case that the public is demanding peace.
Do you think the Palestinian people are demanding peace of their leaders?
No.
So really, neither the Israeli nor the Palestinian public is pushing their leaders to come up with a peaceful solution.
No, I think that's correct.
I see.
There is no political need to solve the problem. There is no urgency. Why? Because we created a kind of a remote control occupation.
See, you are imposing rational decisions on people. What I'm telling you, you cannot impose rational decisions on people. Because if we have a rational model, the Israelis and the Palestinians would have had peace in 1947 and 48 and 49.
Okay, so because the rational option was not acceptable in 1947, we're going to continue with irrational options forever?
This is actually the reality on the ground. If it were up to me, the rational thing is to have peace between Israelis and the Palestinians and to take all this money which we spend on military hardware and spend them on economic development and the well-being of the human.
Okay, but
this is not the way it is.
But you're a rational person. You are a dean of a university.
You will be shocked.
Okay. You're not rational?
No.
Yeah.
Nobody is rational 100%.
So is your rejection of a confederation is a rational decision or is irrational?
Why make it judgmental?
So let's assume that the two-state will be negotiated at some times in the future. We don't know.
I hope so.
Yeah. What's until then?
There is no until then. Until then, nothing can be done because the problem is not resolved.
So
nothing can be done before this.
So until then,
and everything can be done after that.
So until then, we will live in a hostility, basically.
We do live in hostility.
And we will continue until it happens.
Unfortunately, yes. And all those who illude themselves that we can live forever peacefully, no terrorism, everything is quiet, and the occupation will continue, unfortunately, it's a mistake.
There can't be peace without a political solution. It just doesn't work. I think actually we're going to go through a more difficult time with this collapse, because Israel, I think, has no problem whatsoever in imposing an apartheid regime on the Palestinians. And I think it's worse than apartheid, because what Israel wants to impose is what we call warehousing, which is basically saying to the Palestinians, you're stuck in areas A and B in Gaza, and that's it. There's no political process. You'll never have a state. You have no rights. You're not a side. Don't think that we're really negotiating with you. And you're basically in prison. Now, you can get out if you want. You can go to Jordan or Egypt and through there to the rest of the world. But otherwise, if you choose to stay here, you're in prison.
When do you think the Israeli government will allow the refugees to return back to their homes? When will that happen?
I don't have a crystal ball. It could happen in 3 years, or it could happen in 10 years, or in 15 years. It will happen. I am 100% confident that will happen.
So let's assume that it will happen in 3 years. What's going to happen until then? What these refugees going to do? Are they
what they have been doing in the past 65 years, resisting, engaging in education, engaging in boycotts, supporting a boycott, divestment, sanctions movement.
We don't have now, and I don't think that ever we'll have the same interest. Now I see the only interest of the Palestinians is to exterminate, to eliminate our state.
It's better to separate both parties. I mean, we could have peace, but I don't think like people would get along though.
I see.
It depends on the mindset.
The two-state solution requires Israelis and Palestinians to first agree on their most difficult issue, dividing the land they both love. The two-state solution does not offer any mechanism for engagement between the people until after the states have been established. They have big plans for the future. 2 states, 1 state, but for now, nothing. You're also a doctor.
I'm an internist, yes.
So let's say a patient comes to you and says, "Doctor, I need a surgery, a bypass surgery, but I can't have it because my blood pressure is too high. Should I eat well and exercise until the surgery, or shall I eat well and exercise only after I have my surgery?"
The analogy is good. Why? Because sometimes if you can prevent a surgery in medicine, it's better.
كانوا بروح على الدكتور بقول له انه مش عارف روح حل مشاكلك معناته مش رايح عند الطبيب بيعطي وصف صح
انا مش دكتور بالضبط.
Unless we get peace in whatever form, this is going to be a continuing problem. It's going to get worse, not better, especially in the context of what's going on in the Middle East right now.
Let's say you and your husband are in a fight with another couple, and you've been in a fight for 20 years, and you have 4 children and they have 4 children. And naturally, your children take your side, and their children take their side. And then they say to you, "You know, Mom and Dad, we love you. You're still our parents, but we want to get together with those children. And we want to see maybe we can have something together. And once we agree on something, we'll come to you, Mom and Dad, and if you tell us no, hands off. If you tell us yes, great."
Yeah, I see now why you say not super, but below.
Right. This movie proposes the creation of a third government, a confederation, for the people of Israel and Palestine, while at the same time, they each retain their own governments. Under the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation Constitution, there will be 300 parliament members representing 300 districts of the entire area of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. They will elect a president and vice president, a Palestinian and Israeli, who will rotate positions every 2 years. In order to pass legislation, 55% of the Israeli and 55% of the Palestinian members must agree. The separate Israeli and Palestinian governments will have a veto power over the legislation. If those governments veto the legislation, it will not become law. If they fail to veto it, the legislation will become law.
My only problem with this is that I can't imagine in these circumstances, that is with the occupation continuing, because if we're talking, Israel actually controls almost everything. I think you're looking at it from the point of view of a free person.
Free.
You are free.
Yes.
I don't think you understand what it is to live under occupation. You can improve the conditions of the occupation, but you are always going to have people who want freedom.
My conversation with Professor Galia Golan shows how a peace-loving person with an open mind can be transformed from a skeptic into an avid supporter. I find it very curious that you are suspicious of the Israeli government motivation or legitimate claim for security, but you are not suspicious of them claiming that they want 2 states.
Oh, I am suspicious.
You are?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you don't believe they want two states?
This government, no, definitely doesn't.
Okay.
No, I agree. No, this government, no, that's why I say from at this particular point in time, this is better than the present situation. The positive aspect of what you're saying is that if you could create this confederation body, it would be a step at least in the right direction. And it could have a positive effect. And that it is just one place with some kind of legislative authority where there's equality would be a very positive thing. My next question would be, liking the idea, but how in the world are you going to get it?
You're not going to have grassroots support for that.
Well,
because maybe in Palestine, they don't like the Palestinian Authority, but Israelis aren't going to do something that nullifies what they would see as, especially if it means creating equality with Arabs.
خلينا نقول إنه إذا أجينا بدنا نعمل دولة ثالثة، إذا حكومة ثالثة، طب وين حدود دولتنا؟ مين إحنا؟ يعني السؤال.
For the sake of argument, let's say that we agree with what you propose. Where would be the borders of our state, our government?
It's not me, it's not Joseph who will decide what will be the border. It will be 300 some
No, we're asking about the borders of the state.
I'm sorry?
We are asking about the borders of this state that you.
I know, but I don't have an answer. It would be a parliament that will decide where will be the border, and then it will be submitted to the Palestinian government and to the Israeli government.
Where would the Palestinian government sit? Where would be the location of it?
لدولة واحدة. الإسرائيليين، الحكومات الإسرائيلية رفضتنا كشعب، رفضتنا كدولة، رافضين وجودنا. بيقبلوا إنه نكون إحنا وياهم في دولة واحدة. إذا بيجيبوا إحنا ما حدش برفض إن نكون إحنا متساوون في هذه المنطقة.
We are not Arabs. Why should we should be confederation with Arabs? We are the Jewish states. The Palestinians can be confederation with Jordan, with Egypt. What do I have to be a confederation with the Palestinians? Why?
Well, the purpose of
and I don't want them to rule me. I don't want any government to control me.
You told me that it could happen in 3 years, that the Israeli government will allow the Palestinian...
It's not allowed voluntarily, they have to be forced.
Okay. But let's say the Confederation comes up in 1 year, negotiate an agreement where...
Who are you going to negotiate it with? How are you going to negotiate?
It's going to be negotiated between the parliament members of the Israeli-Palestinian
But the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, Jordan, Syria do not have a vote in this parliament. You're determining their future without their vote. So please, and again, when you edit this tape, do not cut and paste to suit your agenda of, to say, pick the part where I said I'm opposed to confederation and leave the parts about why I am opposed to confederation. I'm opposed to it because you have not shown me, you, Joseph, have not shown me that it would respect human rights. If you don't satisfy the refugees, and I'll tell you this finally, Joseph, because I really have to go. But if you don't satisfy the refugees, you can come up with the most wonderful on paper solution in the world.
الحصان الذي يقود هذه العوضات. كيف نتحدث عن كونفدرالية ونحن تحت الاحتلال؟
So what is the...
What is the horse and what is the wagon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your name is?
Joseph.
Joseph. Joe, I don't know if you want this in your movie, but I don't see the need for a third independent government, but I can think of many different kinds of shared government agencies that sit above Israeli and Palestinian jurisdictions.
And the third body would be elected independently of those governments.
By whom?
By the people of Israel and Palestine.
But they're not participating, Joe. They're not participating because their governments have not come to any kind of common agreement. What I'm saying is start small. Mm-hmm. Start small. I think you're sort of saying, well, we can't jump 1 foot, so let's jump 5. I mean, I think it makes much more sense to begin to create areas of sharing and cooperation in those areas where the interests are clearly delineated for both sides.
Your approach is, I trust these two governments to eventually, at one point, reach an agreement. to come up with a third system or a third independent entity. My approach is, I don't trust these two governments. These two governments proved one thing, and that is that they are not able to work together. And since they are not able to work together, the third independent entity should come up from the people of Israel and Palestine, independent of those two governments, regardless of those governments, without the need of their approval.
What are they going to start, a Facebook page? I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. How can you possibly create this third entity without having the two governments agree to participate in it? You didn't
just
have...
create it. You just create the...
You're going to create it? God bless you. You go do it.
We did.
No, you didn't.
We did. We actually had the election, and we created...
And how many participated in it?
We had 900 candidates, and 600 people voted. And
there are 12 million people here.
I know.
900 out of 12 million.
Right. Well, the Wright brothers flew less than 100 feet and less than 10 seconds.
Come on. We're both too intelligent for this. Seriously. Come on, Joe. Give me a break.
I want to ask you, having a confederation, what is the confederation going to give it? What is that, having that government above, going to help?
First of all, it elevates the status of the Palestinians, because now they are able to have equal veto power as the government of Israel, as the Knesset of Israel. So
okay, that's an important thing. That could be the whole answer, that is that they have veto power. But the problem is that the government of Israel can veto anything that the government on top wants to give.
Okay, well, that's the point. That's exactly the point. Can the government of Israel veto anything? That's the issue.
All right, let's go there.
Okay, let's go there. And the answer is no. I don't think, if we elect a very charismatic president and vice president, that's his job. That's his job, to go and negotiate with the Israelis and the Palestinian governments and say, this issue here is not going to affect your security. It's not going to affect the Jewish state. It's not going to affect anything. It's going to, the only thing is going to improve human rights. And if you dare to veto this reasonable legislation, guess what? I'm going to go and tell on you to the whole world that you are an unreasonable person. So if we have the whole issue of whether a confederation of this can be successful is how much support it has within the Israeli and the Palestinian people.
But when surgery is unavoidable, you have to prepare the patient and then carry out the operation.
Okay, but should he eat well and exercise before the surgery?
Of course.
Okay, so why not create a third government? Because you seem to think that a two-state solution is going to happen regardless, that that's the destiny. So why not create a confederation now and have the Israelis and Palestinians eat well and exercise now and not wait until the future?
By definition, there is no confederation but between two independent states. So what I say, time and again, let's have the two states and then have the umbrella or the framework or the confederation, you name it.
Does there have to be a precedent in order for it to
No, it doesn't. There doesn't have to be. We have to create a precedent.
Yeah.
And then we create the right model which can be emulated in North and South Korea.
If your idea is to have a super government above the two governments.
No, just the other way around, to have a government below the governments of Israel and Palestine, and they will be able to pass legislation and then would give the Israeli and the Palestinian a veto power. Those governments.
Look, a mutual veto power can be a part of the constitution of the confederation. But what I emphasize is that the most urgent thing is to have the two-state solution agreed and done and implemented. It's a matter of 5 years.
The elections are virtually worthless unless you have the agreement of the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority.
The agreement of the Israeli and the Palestinian government will be the kiss of death. Because once you have those agreements, then the Palestinians and the Israelis are not going to trust it. It has to be independent of the Israeli, independent of the Palestinian government. It cannot be, it has to be a grassroots organization.
Okay, but that's interesting. It's just, again, you think, in other words, you could actually set this kind of thing up without ever talking to the two governments.
Of course. Of course. Not only can you set it,
you should.
Because the moment you have the government involved, then they'll put their angle in it and destroy it. And then nobody would trust it.
So your theory is that it's really a shaming game. If you can set up this thing and they come up with a proposal like the education thing, it'd be very hard for the governments to ignore it.
You got it. That's it.
That's it.
That's what it is. That's what democracy is.
I mean, the idea is interesting, but totally rejected by me. I want a Jewish state.
Let's say the Confederation is elected. It's not whether you like it or not. It could be elected by the people of Israel and Palestine together, without the consent of the government of Israel or Palestine.
How come?
Well, they just do an election and they elect people.
Who will arrange this election?
I'm sorry?
Who will arrange these elections?
The Confederation. Just like any other democratic institution, they arrange their own government. So let's say some people in Israel and some people in Palestine agree to create a confederation and agree to run an election. And the election will take place and people are elected. And then they pass legislation, and the first legislation they pass is to require the Israeli and the Palestinian educational system to teach tolerance towards each other. You think the Israeli government or the Palestinian government will veto this legislation?
No.
They will not veto it?
No.
So wouldn't that advance the cause of peace?
As I told you, my first preference is not peace, but a Jewish state.
I understand, but you also want to live in peace.
Of course I want to live in peace, because I believe that the best thing for the Jewish state to live in is to live in peace with its neighbors.
So the scenario that I presented to you, does that contradict?
It is not a realistic one.
Well,
in my view, it is not realistic.
I understand it's not realistic.
So hypothetically, it is too hypothetically for me to...
So it's not something that you would even waste your time to think about.
Exactly.
When you mention this idea, when you bring up this idea, the Palestinians will suspect it's a Zionist plot to give them a Palestinian state without giving them really independence. That is just a trick to continue the occupation. While on the other side, on our side, there will be a suspicion that what you are out to is to destroy the state of Israel, the Jewish state, and put in place something else.
So if we have this interview in 5 years and it hasn't happened, would you be in favor of a confederation immediately, right now?
I think confederation is not a panacea. Confederation is a constitutional arrangement which may fit when there are two different, separated, independent, sovereign states which want to, for some reasons, to work together under an umbrella of a third government.
And you say that's the definition of confederation?
This is the definition.
Oh, so why not change the definition?
I don't want to change the definition because this is the definition that I believe in. Look, I'm dealing with this conflict as maybe the main priority of my day-to-day life since the early 80s. And I'm convinced, and I became more convinced after I was the governor of the West Bank, that we have to separate Israelis and Palestinians, to have two states, but that these two states will cooperate very, very closely.
It won't work. I'm telling you, it won't work. The idea here, the only solution, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, is two states on 1967 borders.
At the end of the day, the water underground doesn't understand two states. The frequency above us doesn't understand two states. The airspace doesn't understand two states. The wildlife doesn't understand two states.
I would like to offer an alternative strategy, from a strategy of trauma to a strategy of trust. And I believe that once trust is introduced to the region, it will be a long process.
I think really the real problem here is the logistics. Is, you know, how do you get to X number of people? How do you set up your districts and get them to vote? You saw how hard it was to explain it to me.
Yeah.
It has to be explained, and if it's hard to explain it to me.
And you're a professor of government.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sort of sort of know these things.
That's the hardest.
It's very hard. It has to be, because I was thinking, even for me to be able to respond, we need a lot of time. No, it's a very interesting idea. I mean, looking at it this way, now that I understand it.
You know, very good people here.
We should have a good future together. This is my dream, and I hope we will have it once.
So we need to change our thinking.
When a few Israelis and Palestinians who support this concept got together at the Everest Hotel in Beit Jala, our meeting was rudely interrupted and we were forced out.
وعار على الفلسطينية بقعدوا وبطبعوا امبارح معتز وشحة بقتلوه في نص بير زيت. عيب بس عيب على الفلسطينيين هذول وانتم بتيجوا عار عليكم تيجوا تقعدوا مع الحثالة هذول.
You come to talk or to listen?
No, I don't.
Just to talk?
I don't need to talk with you. I don't need to talk with you.
Not talk. You just want
I don't believe to talk with you. You go to speak with the Israeli army there. It's shame for you to come here to sit.
أبو الشباب خلاص وصلت رسالته خلاص.
Want anyone here? Please go.
Well, finish.
Now. If you want to make a big problem, do it in the street, not in my.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming.
At this time, an Israeli-Palestinian Confederation seems counterintuitive. It is clearly not going to be embraced by most Israelis or Palestinians.
And I want to bed in my home.
We have witnessed vociferous objections to it on both sides.
In about 10 or 20 years, I think this is going to be the majority view.
Change, you want to go?
Those who object to the idea of a confederation share one thing. They do not understand what it is and refuse to learn about it. They ignore the fact that their respective governments have failed them and offer no viable formula for peace.
Speak bad word with me.
You have the potential, you and I and us have the potential to create peace in the whole region. You and I together, we can create peace in this whole region.
Now the Israeli army go to Al-Aqsa Mosque. Why? You have people there you want to pray. He don't have.
An Israeli-Palestinian Confederation is a coalition of the reasonable.
Do you know the
Those Israelis and Palestinians who are willing to engage.
Do you know that I, as a Jew, cannot go to Al-Aqsa to pray?
And refuse to isolate themselves from each other.
On tolerance, who's against? Okay, who's in favor? Who's in favor? And who abstained?
في هيك وفي هيك، في اللي بأيد مبادرة السلام، في اللي متخوف منها لأنه في عنا استيطان كثير عنا في الخليج وما في خوف من السلام. يعني أنا كمان بنفس الوقت.
I believe the Confederation is like a bridge. The Confederation is serving as the necessary third, what you call third government, I call a bridge between two entities, two peoples, two cultures.
I think that's very interesting. I think that's a very interesting idea, because that could make a difference.
What if there is a war between the Israelis and the Palestinians? and you're the prime minister. And
between the two states, you mean?
Between the two states, either a war or there is some sort of violence.
Clashes, yeah.
And a soldier gets killed. And you're the prime minister of Israel. And the mother of the soldier comes to you and said, Mr. Balin, did you consider the idea of a confederation? What would you tell her?
That this is against my ideology. I think that it was totally wrong. I mean, there are many ways to prevent wars. One of them is to give up on the Jewish state and go back to Europe if the Europeans are ready still to accept us. I mean, the point in which bereaved families are asking, I mean, why don't you fight more? Why didn't you take revenge? Why didn't you succumb to the demands of the other side? Is something that regretfully I met many times in my life. And this will not change my ideology if it happens. And if, God forbid, there is war between the two parties, then we should do whatever we can in order to end this war as soon as possible. But that's it.
So you would tell her, I am more concerned about having a Jewish state
exactly.
than peace.
No, of course. This is what I'm telling you.
14 months after this interview, Yossi Beilin appeared before the Wilson Center in Washington, D.C., where U.S. State Department veteran Aaron David Miller clung to the same failed policy.
Peace process, Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. My own view right now is that the two-state solution is too hard to implement and yet too important to abandon, which puts us in a very awkward position.
I was very pleasantly surprised by Yossi Beilin's response.
Well, I must admit that I'm toying with something which has been hovering in the air for many years, and which in the past I did not attribute too much importance to it. And this is the idea of an Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. I think that if there is such a confederation, then the idea of the two states will not be so, I would say, black and white. In 1999, we went to the elections when Barak was elected. On the slogans, we are here and they are there. And I must admit, I hated the slogan. I hated the slogan. I mean, this was not my idea. I mean, I was part of it by not revolting against it. And you know, people said, okay, if what you want is divorce, it is better. I mean, people accepted our slogans. I believe that we were wrong, because this was not exactly ourselves. And I think that the idea of a confederation can really solve the problem. We are speaking about I'm speaking about two totally sovereign states, independent states, two members of the UN and members of all the other organizations in the world. Now, in such a situation, one of the results might be that all those settlers who want to stay in their settlements will not be evacuated. For an Israeli prime minister, this is a key, because the biggest fear of the Israeli prime minister, from the right and from the left, when they speak about the two-state solution, is the moment in which they will have to evacuate hundreds of thousands of settlers from their places. Second generation, third generation. If you say to them, dear settlers, next Wednesday in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, we leave the West Bank, and we suggest to you very nice compensation. You want to leave? Be our guest. You don't want to leave? Remain there. It is much more reasonable to allow them to live there in a kind of a common confederation rather than if it is two different states. And you can in an easier way, deal with another very problematic issue, which is security. If it is a confederation, the confederation might have also joint security forces, and not just a situation whereby one state has to host security forces of another state and whatever. It is possible to create a confederation, rather than to say, peace is divorce and that's it. You will be there in your ghetto, we will be here in our ghetto, and we will never meet. It's idiotic. So my new idea, my new baby, is the confederation.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much.